Hello, and welcome to the TestRail Anatomy of a Test Case webinar. My name is John Reynolds, and I will be doing the presentation today. So our agenda for today is to cover pretty much everything test case related in TestRail. We're going to take a look at just a brief definition of what test cases are, how to create and organize your test cases, how to customize your test cases using custom fields and test case templates. We're going to take a look at the separate test steps and shared test steps inside of TestRail. This is a special field, so we're going to give it a little bit of special attention. We're going to look at deleting test cases and the different ways to delete test cases either immediately and permanently or temporarily in a restorable state. And then we're going to look at importing and editing test cases in bulk using file imports and exports or the bulk options available inside of TestRail. Finally, we should have some time for some Q&A at the end of the webinar to answer any other questions of interest that have come up in the chat console that we have either been able to answer during the webinar or which would be good to address to everyone so everyone can hear an explanation as well. So let's get started. Before we get into actually creating test cases, TestRail does provide multiple project types, so we should take a look at these first. All test cases in TestRail are contained inside projects. Each project contains unique sets of test cases. We generally recommend creating one project per project that your team is working on. However, how you organize your test cases is ultimately up to your team and what best suits your needs. When creating a project, you have the option to define the number of suites you use inside your project. By default, and what we generally recommend, is using a single repository for all of your test cases and then organizing these test cases into sections. You can also use a single repository with baseline support, which allows you to create a base version of your test cases and then create cloned versions of this baseline so you can work on multiple versions of your project and test these in parallel. We also provide the option to use multiple test suites to manage your test cases. Each suite is separate and not directly related to any other suite within your project, and it just provides another way to organize your test cases separately inside of TestRail. So here I'm not going to create a project because I already have one created for this presentation. So this is a single suite project, so all test cases will appear on the test cases view. If you have a multi-suite project, you will have a test suite and cases button here, which will provide you with the list of test suites to choose from before viewing your test cases. Now that we've looked at the project types, let's take a closer look at test cases, how we can create them and organize them into sections using TestRail's UI. When inside your project and viewing your list of test cases, it is easy to create test cases quickly and organize them into sections using drag and drop functionality. Using the Add Case button, you can quickly create test cases inside TestRail by entering a title for these test cases as you go. After the test cases are created, you can go in and edit them individually. You can also use the Add Test Case button on the right to go into the full test case detail screen and create test cases through here. We will cover that more in a moment. When viewing your list of test cases, you can also create your sections and move your test cases around between your sections using drag and drop to copy or move. You can select multiple test cases at one time and move them together, create duplicates, and you can also use the hierarchy on the right to move your sections around. To create a test case and enter all test case details, Press the Add Test Case button when viewing your list of test cases. This opens up the full test case creation screen where you can create a new test case. There are some predefined fields available by default, and some of these fields will always be required within TestRail. The section field allows you to place your test case anywhere in your sections which you have already created. The template field allows you to choose from some defined test case templates, and each template is a set of test case fields which would match the test which you are going to perform. So for an exploratory session, we have a couple of predefined fields for mission and goals for this exploratory test. The test case text field includes a preconditions, a steps, so a single text field to define your steps, and expected result, which would define what you would expect after performing your steps. There's also a test case steps field. This field provides you with the ability to use separate steps and expected results. So you can add many sets of steps and results for your test case. We will cover some more of this information shortly. However, there are many flexibilities available for individual steps. The type field, it includes some predefined options for what test case type you are doing, whether it's acceptance, accessibility, functional, regression, etc. We have priority, including critical, high, medium, and low. And then some other default fields of an estimate, so the amount of time that you think the test case will take to perform. A references field, which allows you to link the test case to an entity outside of TestRail, such as a JIRA issue. An automation type field, so if this test case is automated, you can choose which type of automation you are using. If you are using our partner product RannerX, this will allow you to link your test cases to RannerX tests. And many of these test case fields are customizable. While these first four set fields are required, you can still customize your priorities, your test case types, your templates, and your sections. So all of these will be based on data you have configured inside of TestRail. Any other field can be enabled or disabled on a per test case template basis, and also on a per project basis. In addition to the various field types and test case templates, TestRail's test cases also support attachments. You can add attachments inside of text fields and also using the attachment dialog on the right-hand side. To add a file to a text field, press the icon near the text field. This will open the attach file dialog, which allows you to upload a new file up to 256 megabyte, or choose from an existing file you've already uploaded to this project. Using the attachment dialog on the right allows you to add a file to the test case without inserting it into a field. If you would like to remove a file from your test case, you can long press on the thumbnail image, which will enable the delete button for the attachment. You can select multiple test case attachments as well and remove multiple files at one time. One of the important features of TestRail is the ability to customize your test cases. We provide many customization options to allow you to create various test case templates and configure your custom fields on a per project and per template basis. Let's take a look at some of the options that are available inside of TestRail and take a deep look into how to configure your custom fields. TestRail administrators have the ability to customize your test case fields, result fields, test case templates, and other entities inside of TestRail. The Case Fields tab, available on the Customizations area, provides the option to create new test case fields. These fields will appear when creating and editing your test cases. Result fields are available when adding your test results inside of your test runs. Test case templates are used to hold sets of your test case fields. So the template field inside your test case, as you change the template, the fields which are selected for that template will appear based on the configuration in this area. Test case types are the options that will appear in the type field of your test cases. So you can add as many fields as you want and delete existing fields if you do not perform certain test types inside of TestRail. Similarly, the priorities area is used to define your test case priorities. Statuses are used for your test results. So by default, TestRail includes a pass status, blocked, untested, retest, and failed. You can also add and customize up to 7 additional status types for a total of 12. The UI scripts are used to customize the TestRail interface, which UI scripts are out of the scope of this presentation. If you'd like to learn more about UI scripts, then we do have documentation on the TestRail documentation area. The case fields area has all of the case fields which are customizable inside of TestRail. The fields such as case type, template, and priority will not appear here as a customizable field. However, other fields are available for customization options. The estimate, milestone, and references fields are fields which cannot be deleted but are still customizable, so you can enable and disable these on a per project basis. Any other field which exists in TestRail by default can be deleted or edited as necessary. There's also a fine dividing line in a couple of areas here. So any field which is considered a required system field cannot be reorganized or moved around. The case fields area also has up and down arrows for various field types. This allows you to change the order of the fields as they appear in your test cases. Your test cases have 2 distinct sections to them. The top section contains all of the small fields such as drop-down menus, strings, integers, and other field types. The bottom section contains all of the larger fields, such as larger text input boxes, your steps fields, and separated steps. Within each major section, you can move different field types up and down to change the order as they appear. However, you cannot move a large text field into the very top of the test case. Any large fields will always be in the bottom portion. The Add Field button allows you to create a new test case field which will appear inside of your test cases. Each field is required to have a label which will appear inside the UI. So we will just apply a version label to this. The description text is text which will appear below the field, providing additional context for this field if you'd like to enter it. The system name is also required for this. The system name is generally used inside the TestRail API and will also be added to the TestRail database. The system name for the test case field is the name which gets added to the TestRail database and which is also used by the TestRail API. All system names for custom fields will be prefixed by the word custom and an underscore. You do not need to add this to your custom field name. This will be added automatically. So here we will just add the version system name. Each custom field has a variety of options. So you can choose a checkbox field, which is a single checkbox for a Boolean value, yes or no, on or off, however you would like to interpret it. We have a date field, which supports standard date. We have a drop-down field, which can be a drop-down menu, which allows you to define different options to be available. We have an integer field, which provides you with the option to just enter whole numbers. The milestone field. This milestone field will be based off the milestones which are inside of your TestRail project. You do not define the milestones in the custom field settings, but instead these are automatically populated based on what you have already got set up in your project. And this field will change dynamically as you add and update your milestones inside TestRail. The multi-select fields allows you to choose multiple options. So you can define multiple different options to be available and then select more than one of these options. The steps field is used for separated test steps. Your TestRail instance can only have one separated steps field. So if you already have a separated steps field defined, you will not be able to use this field type. However, if you do delete the separated steps field and would like to recreate it, you can choose this option. String field is a standard string, so up to 250 characters. A text field is a text input box. The URL link, which is a hypertext link to any external resource that you would like to use. And the user field. Similar to the milestone field, the user field is pre-populated based on your available TestRail users. So there's no customization to the options inside this field, as the values will automatically be based on the users that are available inside your instance. We will choose to use a drop-down field for this demonstration, since the drop-down field will allow us to provide some customization options so we can also see what options are available for various field types. You also have the option to apply this field to all test case templates. So if I add this field to all test case templates, then this field will be available on the exploratory test case template, the test case template with separated steps, and the test case template with a single text field. You can also choose to use this field only in specific templates. So if I just want to apply this to an exploratory session template, I can do that here. Finally, you need to add your TestRail projects which you would like this field to be available in. You can choose to apply this to every project or only specific projects. So this not only allows you to create a field which is used in a specific template, but also in a specific template that applies only to specific projects, providing with great flexibility in the number of fields that you can have inside of your test case templates without overwhelming your users with fields which do not matter. So let's just select sample project here. If I had multiple projects, I could choose multiple projects to apply for this test case field. Looking at the options, so here for the items available inside the drop-down menu, we have some default text here just to show you the example of how to input your data. So you would enter an ID number, comma, followed by the value. So here we have version as a drop-down. So we will just say version 1.0. The next line, we will do version 1.1, version 2.0. And you can add as many values as you'd like. We can also choose to have a default value and whether or not we would like this field to be required every time a user creates or edits the test case. Pressing OK here provides us with a configuration list here. If we had multiple projects and this only applied to one of the projects, I would have the option to add another configuration for a different project, allowing me to even set different values for the same custom field inside of different projects. Which once again, this prevents the need to create multiple test case custom fields for this version type when I can customize all the versions available for different projects. So if I add this field, it will be added to TestRail. So this now appears as the version field, and this is grouped together with the automation type section because this is a drop-down field. So I can move this up and down within this section because this will appear in the top portion of my test case. So let's go take a look at how this test case field appears inside the UI. Let's go back to my sample project and my test cases. Let's edit, say, this test case here, and edit. So here I now have a version field which is marked as required, and I can choose an option. This field does have a default value, but since this test case was pre-existing, we did not apply a default value to this test case already. So now I must select a version, and I can save my test case. If I look and change my template, I can see that the field is no longer present because it is not required for this test case template. Similarly, the test case text template does not have the field. Now let's take a brief but closer look at test case templates and how we can customize these inside of TestRail. So back in the administration area, we're going to look at test case templates. Before taking a look directly into templates, let's talk about result fields first. Test case templates use test case fields to populate what is shown when you are editing or creating a test case. Result fields are shown when you are adding results to your tests. Both result fields and case fields behave similarly in the UI where you enter information into these fields. And they both are associated with specific test case templates. So if you have an exploratory test where you perform certain steps or have certain input values when performing the test, when you're adding results for an exploratory test, you may have specific fields which you would like filled out to record your results. Similarly, if you have an automated test, you may want different fields which would appear when you're adding results to automated tests. So you can add additional fields for result dialogues in the result fields area. We can go through this, but it would be very similar to the case template or the test case field options, where you would add a field with a specific field type and enter your customization options. But let's take a look at templates. If you have a test case template, the template will include a selected set of fields for both results and test cases. So let's create a new test case template here. We're just going to call this a webinar demo. We have the option of setting this template as a default template. Please keep in mind that if you do set a template as a default template, this will have to apply to every TestRail project because only one template can be the default. So in order to be a default, it has to be available for any project. Now, if we'd like to select it for specific projects, we can do so here by selecting this template applies to the following projects only. Since we only have one project, I'm still going to select the single project. So if I add template, that will quickly create the template for me. But now if I go in and edit the template, I can choose which fields will appear for both the test cases and when adding test results. So by default, this will include estimate, milestone, references, and automation type. Well, this type of template, we're not going to call an automation template, so let's just remove that field from the template. So the field has been removed, the template will be updated. Now let's add another field. So we want this to have the separated steps field. So if I just select that, and it's added. So the test case field has been added to this template. So now I should see an estimate, milestone, references. And when I add results, I should see a version, elapsed, which is the elapsed time it took to perform the test, and the defects field, which will include any other related linked defects for the test case. For separated steps, we also have the option of step result fields. So here I will just decide to include the step results for my test case. And we will go through and show how this works when we cover test runs, but I'm going to include this for demonstration down the road. So now that I've edited my template, I have added the separated steps field, I removed the automation type field, and I added the step result field. So all of these fields should appear. These fields will appear when I edit or add a test case using this template, and these fields will appear when I add results to a test case that uses this template. I mentioned briefly that there is a separated steps field inside of TestRail and also the ability to use shared test steps. This functionality was added in TestRail 7.0. For a deeper look into this functionality, we do recommend checking out their 7.0 release webinar, which is available on our website. But I do want to show some customization options in this webinar as well. So let's take a look at the separated steps and shared test steps. So back in the administration area, let's take a look at the separated steps field. Separated steps field is a special field. There can only be one separated steps field type for your TestRail instance. There are a couple of options that are available for this field, which are not available for other fields in TestRail. This field provides the option to add extra data to your test cases that use separated steps. Not only can you add multiple steps to a test case, you can also have more fields available for your test steps. For each test step, by default, we include an expected result field, so you can have a step and an expected result pair per step. You can also include an extra field for additional information. You can also include a references field for your test steps. This allows you to include a link to an external requirement, user story, or even a bug in the references field of the steps. So let's take a look at, I'm just going to enable these extra fields, and let's take a look at how these work inside our test cases. Back to our project. Let's create a new test case that uses the separated steps field. We'll just call it something basic, and let's change it to the test case with steps. So the separated steps field appears here. By default, you don't have any steps in your test case, but if you hit the Add Step button, you can add a new test step, and you can hit this button or the plus sign to add more steps as needed. So we would have a sample, proceed to login prompt, expected result, the screen loads, log in with invalid credentials. So you can add some additional information such as an input here. And then login fails. And if I have a user story, I can tie this to a user story or whatever testing requirement or requirement document I have. So I'll just call this Jira 1234 and save my test case. So here, since I'm on the new test creation screen, I can hit add test case to save my test case or add in next to proceed to create another test case after this. I'm just going to hit add test case here. So now I have two steps with additional information in here. TestRail also provides the ability for shared test steps. So if I hit shared test steps, this is a separate repository within your project. So the shared test steps are shared between all test cases in your project. They are not shared between TestRail projects. So if you need them in multiple projects, you would have to create them in multiple projects. Any test case which uses a shared test step will dynamically update as the shared test steps are updated. So similar to tests inside test runs being updated based on changes in your test cases, your test cases are updated based on changes in your shared test steps. So let's take a look at what we mean here. So let's do this as a failed login. So let's use enter, and we'll use, I'm just entering some generic information here. Let's enter that same Jira reference and hit save. So now we have a single test step. I can add multiple test steps if needed, so you can continue to add multiple steps. You can also use the up and down arrows to move steps around as needed. But here we're just going to proceed with a single step as a sample. Let's go back to my test cases. And there's my separated steps case. So let's edit this case. So now I have the option to import a set of shared steps. So here I have the failed login steps. I can also search through my titles of other shared steps as they're available in my repository. But here I'm going to import this after step 2. We can also insert it before step 2. We'll just do after. So now I have a shared test step. These two steps contain the same information. However, this third step is a shared step. For demonstration purposes, I'll show you what happens here now. So if I go back to my shared test step repository, let's change this set of steps. You can also see here, before we do go into the change, you can see which test cases use this set of steps. And I can click on this and open up that test case if I need to edit the test case instead. So failed login steps, let's change this to, let's say we had the wrong requirement here. Now let's go back to our test case. We'll navigate quickly through this way. So now I can see that my reference has updated as well. This step is not changed because it is not using the shared step, but the shared step here has been updated accordingly. So these shared test steps are available after TestRail 7.0. So any customer using TestRail 7.0 has the ability to use shared test steps. So you can create reusable sets of test steps to hopefully reduce the amount of effort needed to maintain your test cases over time. So many test cases may have repeatable steps that rarely need updating, but when they do, you can update them quickly if you've got your shared test steps configured as well. Now that we've shown how to configure custom fields and templates, let's go back to test cases and take a look at some additional functionality. We'll start with how to bulk edit your test case field values. So when you're viewing the list of test cases in your test suite, you can make bulk changes to your test cases. To perform this bulk operation, you can select multiple test cases or apply a test case filter using the filter options available. Once you have selected your test cases, press the Edit button and you can choose to edit selected or edit all in the filter, which could include all of your test cases in a section or matching any other criteria you choose. When you edit these test cases, you can choose to change any field that is available. Just check the box next to the field you'd like to change and choose what you would like to modify. You can move the test cases between sections. You can change the template that is used by the test case, and you can change pretty much any other value that is available. Since you can create test cases in TestRail and also edit them, it makes sense that you can also delete them. So let's take a look at some of the delete options for TestRail that allow you to delete test cases immediately and permanently, and also place them in a temporary deleted status in case you need to restore them at a future time. In TestRail, there are many ways to delete your test cases. You can delete your test cases when viewing the list of test cases by hovering over your title, and you can press the delete icon which appears. You can select multiple test cases and choose the delete option here. You can also open an individual test case and in the edit screen, delete the test case. There are different ways to delete test cases inside of TestRail. You can choose to delete test cases permanently or mark them as deleted. Marking test cases as deleted makes them recoverable for a certain amount of time as configured in your TestRail instance. These test cases will be recoverable from 7 to 30 days depending on what your administrator has configured. If you delete a test case permanently, it will be deleted from all of your test runs which use this test case, assuming that those test runs are still open. And it will also make the recovery of the test case impossible without a full data restore or recreating the test case through an import or manual creation process. So we'd always recommend taking extreme caution when trying to delete test cases permanently and only delegate those permissions to users who should have them. So let's take a look at these operations in action. So if I select 3 test cases here, I can press the delete button and I can choose to mark the test cases as deleted or choose to delete them permanently. So I'm going to mark them as deleted and these test cases will disappear from the interface. If I choose the button to display deleted test cases, I can see these test cases actually still exist, and I can choose to restore them just by opening the edit dialog, which will give me the prompt to restore them. Or I can view the test case individually and choose to restore it here. So if I restore this test case and go back to my test case list, I can see this test case has been restored while the other 2 are still marked as deleted. However, if I want to delete a test case permanently, if I press the delete permanently button, I will receive another prompt because this is an action which cannot be undone, so it should be performed with caution. If I choose to delete permanently, the test case is gone and it does not display in my deleted test case list. I cannot go into this test case and find it because it has been deleted from the database. If you have test runs and test plans inside TestRail, since each test run is based on test cases inside your project, whether or not you delete test cases will also impact your test runs. So for example, let's take a look at how this behavior affects your test runs. So let's create a quick test run. I'm just going to use default settings and include all test cases. So now here I only have these test cases, test case 1, exploratory test cases, and the 3 in the second section. So let's go back to my test case, show my deleted tests, and let's restore test case 3. Now that I've restored test case 3, let's go back to my test run and see what's changed. Now test case 3 is present in my test run. So if I went and marked test case 3 as deleted, it would disappear from my test run again. However, now let's take a look at what happens if I delete this exploratory test case permanently. Similar to your test suite, the test case is gone and cannot be restored. It does not appear when you display deleted test cases. When I go to my test run, the test is gone as well. So I would lose my testing data if I delete test cases that are used in open test runs. To help prevent that information, the data loss, a good practice is to close your test runs. Closing a test run archives any test case information that was available at the time you close a test run. So if I make changes to test case 1 in the future, it will not affect any copies of that test case inside of closed test runs. This helps prevent you from losing data if you inadvertently delete test cases or need to modify your test cases for future test runs, but don't want to lose the data that was available at the time of performing your runs. I don't want to get too far into test runs and how they work in TestRail because this is focused on test cases, but keep in mind that modifying your test cases will affect any test runs which use those test cases, unless the test run has been closed. The same applies to test plans. If you close a test plan, that archives your test case information at the time of the test plan being closed. In addition to supporting bulk editing of test cases, TestRail also supports importing functionality from files and also other projects, and also the ability to export your files to CSV and XML format. So let's take a look at some of this functionality. TestRail provides a couple of options for importing your test cases, either from files or from other projects. So let's take a look at some of the extra buttons that are available within your test suite. We have the Copy or Move Cases dialog, which allows you to copy or move test cases from another project into the current project. Please keep in mind that moving test cases from one project to another actually deletes the test cases from the source project and recreates them in your new project. So moving test cases between projects is the same as a deletion action in the source project. So that would require delete permissions and also could affect your test case histories, test results, and other information as a consequence of deleting your test cases. Opening this dialog allows you to choose your source project. Since we only have one project and one test suite available in this project, this is the only option that would appear. If you had multiple TestRail projects with multiple suites, you would see each project and suite name listed here. So here, it provides the option to copy and move test cases from your source project. However, since this project is the same, I don't have anything to copy over because I would just need to perform these actions inside my current project. So let's go make another project real quick. Let's go to my dashboard, create a new project. So this would be project 2. Let's go to my test cases. I'm just going to create a couple of quick test cases here. Let's add some cases. So source, we'll just name them source 1 so we can easily identify what's happening here. All right, so I've got some test cases created. Let's go back to my sample project and copy some test cases over. So using the copy dialog, I now see that my other project appears. So let's choose project 2. We can choose to copy the entire section, individual test cases. You also have the option to copy and move sections, only test cases, or the sections and all parents. So if you had nested sections, you could import the section hierarchy as well. We're just going to move cases, and we're going to copy them over because I'm going to copy source 1, 2, and 3 over here. And actually, I do want the sections here. So let's copy these over. So I've hit the copy button, and now my source project appears, my source project section with my imported cases appears at the bottom. Now let's do this again with the move option. So let's just move this test case. We will move the case only, and we will add it to a specific section. So let's move it to our source project section, which would be in this test suite. Let's move it. So this does provide me with a prompt that this will remove the test case from the other project and affect any test results associated with it. So now we have source 4 test case over in this destination project. Going back to project 2, let's see what happened here. Now we only have 3 test cases because the other test case was deleted, and it was deleted permanently. So keep that in mind, please, when moving your test cases between projects, because it will create a permanent deletion of your test cases that you're moving around. We always would recommend copying your test cases and then deleting them on a separate task if you need to. Now, TestRail also offers some bulk export and import options for your test cases. So the import button here allows you to import test cases from an XML file or a CSV. You can also export your test cases to XML or CSV and also Excel. The Excel export will create a CSV file, but it does have some additional formatting inside the file for Excel compatibility. But it will still be a CSV file. So if I choose to export my test cases to CSV, I can choose specific sections. You can hold Control or Command to click and select multiple sections. And you can also choose the columns which you would like to appear in your CSV file. If you have separated steps, you can also choose to include separated steps on separate rows in your export file. This makes for easier importing of your test cases. I've already exported a file, so let's take a look at how this file looks and how I can import this file back into TestRail. So here I have a CSV file. I have a title column, priority column, section depth, and the type column. So let's import these test cases. I've named them all imported test case just for visibility when I do import these test cases. There we go. All right, so when I import test cases using CSV, this import will always create new test cases. Importing from CSV does not support updating your test cases. It will always create new test cases. If you would like to update test cases through an import file, we recommend using an XML file instead. You can simply export your test cases to XML, edit any fields that you need to edit using a find and replace or make any other change you need to make, and then re-import that using the import cases dialog. I'm not going to go into that. It's generally a straightforward process of editing your XML file and then re-importing it. Just be careful not to modify the XML structure so that the test cases will be imported properly. So let's look at the CSV dialog since this is a little more complex. The import from XML will be a straightforward import. It only allows you to choose to add or update and find your file. The import from CSV has a few more options. So here, let's browse for my file. I have my sample import. These files are limited to 10 megabytes, so if you have large files greater than 10 megabyte, you will need to split these into multiple files. So with format and mapping, this is how you would map each column to test case fields. So we're just going to configure a new mapping. If you are uploading a similar file over and over again, you can load a previously used mapping, and then that'll make the process a lot quicker. I'm going to import these. I'm just going to leave this blank so it will create all new sections. I'm going to use UTF encoding. Generally, we would recommend using the UTF encoding, especially if you are using foreign characters in your file. Default CSV delimiter. You can also use a couple of other separators here. The start row is 1 because I do have a header row. And I am going to import these into a single template. So these test cases, when importing, should have the same template. So I'm going to import these all into the webinar demo. There's a minor bug here. This arrow should be on the left, which we are working on fixing. So the test cases use a single row. If I was importing test cases with separated steps, I would select multiple rows and then choose where each test case changed. So each step would be on its own row. Then typically everything else on the line would be blank. So every time you've reached a new title, it would detect that as a new test case. But everything in this import uses a single row. Now I map my columns. So priority, section depth, which is not available. Section depth is available in the export, but however, it is not available in an import. And then we will do the type. Let's go next. Remove any HTML tags if necessary. I always choose this, but it's not necessary. Actually, I don't have any HTML tags that I need to worry about. So the priority, there's also a priority mapping. So all of my priorities, medium matches medium and other matches other. So if you had a different system where you say you had priority, you just had a number value, you can match the number value to a test case field. Similarly with a type, you could match something. If it's not an exact match, you can still choose what you would like to correlate it to in TestRail. Let's go next. So this provides me with a sample of what my test cases, what my fields will look like when I import them. So it gives me a sample of a few test cases. It's not going to show every test case in your file. If it does contain hundreds of test cases, it will just give you a few to review as a sample. So now import. I got a confirmation dialog that this was imported successfully, and I can download the configuration file, which is the mapping file for my columns if I need to do this, if I need to repeat this process for other files. So that's done. And now I look, I have my test cases imported in sections. Since it did not import the section hierarchy the way I would like it to, I can simply move my sections on the right and nest them accordingly. Oops, I'm not doing it right. There we go. One final functionality to take a look at is the ability to print your test cases. We have a print icon here, which provides you with the ability to export test cases to a PDF file. So the print option provides you with an outline, which is generally a list of your test cases, or the detailed view, which provides your test cases with your test case field information. Using the print option for your computer, you can choose to print this to a PDF file, a printer, or any other export that your printing functionality supports. All right, well, now we will officially wrap this up here. Once again, thanks to everybody for attending. If you have not seen any of our other webinars, we do have some recorded webinars available, and we have more coming up, so please check out our website, thegurok.com/testrail/webinars, and we hope to see you at another webinar in the future. Thank you very much.